Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. Today I have a very special interview here at the Parallel Neapolis in the Czech Republic. And next to me we have Max Hampshire, who is the developer relations guy at NIM. If you're not aware of NIM, I had an interview with Harry Halpin a few months ago. I think it's been almost 1 year. And it seems like the project has really grown. Harry is upstairs doing some networking, I guess. He was like, I'm not sure if he has something new to say, but definitely Max has a lot of stuff to add. You guys had a presentation on stage about an hour ago, and you have some announcements like a master plan or something.
Yeah, we did. So, I, as the developer relations guy, my main job is I do all of our technical documentation. I'm looking after all of our grants program. I also help people actually, building this infrastructure and running this infrastructure as well. So I do talks, I do workshops. So I did that talk, and then me and Harry kind of did a double team with this talk where we went over the roadmap, kind of what we've achieved so far. The last year has been crazy. We launched in February on mainnet. So we were kind of going over that, but then we were also looking at what we're going to be doing in the future, which way we're kind of moving and what we have to do to make the Mixnet anonymous enough that you could use it to protect yourself against the kind of global passive adversary that at the moment is actually probably as we speak is maybe one of the things behind the continual DDoSing of Tor, and then we also did a small announcement about essentially a legal defense fund that was being announced, properly launched in Bogota in March too.
Yeah, I speak with some friends who build wallets sometimes, and they're upset about the fact that Tor gets DDoSed so often. They have to do customer support and explain to people that it's not their fault, that sometimes the wallet is unreliable and doesn't sync. It can't send transactions if it doesn't sync. So exactly. It's pretty terrible that this is happening, and this has been sustained for 5 or 6 months now. I think Tor has been super unreliable lately, and this makes it more interesting to look at alternatives. And this is part of the reason why I wanted so badly to have someone from NIM, because when I interviewed Harry, the project was still, I think still now, it's still in development. There is a lot of stuff to build, but it's getting better, and you guys have pretty good funding and backing, so I'm pretty sure you're gonna make it at one point. It's all a matter of making users.
It is. I mean, it's a couple of things. We at the moment, building this kind of a system and all of the deep networking stuff that happens in the infrastructure, right? To give it the privacy preserving properties that we really want. They take time as well. And this is hopefully like on the horizon. This is not maybe by next year. This is, the next few months. So in terms of the turnaround, then the last year it's really been focused on like we now have the Mixnet up. We want to see how it reacts as we start slowly ramping users in, which is maybe something I can talk about later, how we've been actually getting people to start using it. But then, there's also, there's some deeper networking stuff, some, kind of anonymous replies, replay protection, increasingly, which is something that we've already experienced, some censorship protection as well. And, some of that stuff you can also only really work on when the system's already kind of running. So you can see, how something maybe is working, and then you can start, implementing solutions to that too. Also, we wanted to get it up and get it built and start testing on the road as quickly as possible, because otherwise people would maybe be waiting, a lot longer if we tried to ship it in the kind of end state that we want it to be in.
I think at this point, we should explain the difference between Tor and NIM.
Yep.
Tor works with routing nodes and an exit node. I think it's illegal to run an exit node in most countries, and that's kind of one of the big problems with it, as the exit node has access to some information that the routing nodes don't. And NIM uses Mixnet, which is a Chaumian idea. It was created by David Chaum in the 1990s or something, or probably earlier.
I actually think it was the late 80s when he published that paper. Yeah. So Mixnets have been around for a while. There was a few attempts at Mixnets. Mixminion was running, and I know this is something that Harry said before. Maybe Mixminion was actually the way that Nakamoto was actually, sending emails to the mailing list when talking about Bitcoin and trying to remain anonymous. But this NIM is the first incentivized Mixnet. So now obviously we've seen all of the implosions, declines, and massive growth of blockchains in all various shapes and forms, and all of the work that's going on there on the protocol design layer. And now it's kind of we can use some aspects of blockchain technology to be able to build an incentivized Mixnet. The Mixnet itself isn't on the blockchain, but there's the token, the rewarding, and the reputation system are, and that also gives us a greater flexibility when it comes to actually allowing users to be using the Mixnet and know that they're maybe, not being man in the middle in terms of knowing which routes to send their packets through. But I can go a bit more into this difference between Tor and NIM, right? So there are certain similarities. So Tor uses onion routing, right, which is where you want to send some traffic through Tor and out of a particular exit node. And so you multiply encrypt your packets like an onion, with each layer being able to be decrypted and then by a particular node, which can then see where it needs to send the traffic, right? So in that way, NIM and Tor are relatively similar. We also use a multiply encrypted and route-based encryption model, where packets, you define a route for a packet, and then you encrypt accordingly, so they can be decrypted by the gateways and mixed nodes in between, and then finally sent either out of the other side or just to the kind of the other NIM client that you want to be talking to. So that's how they're similar. There's a couple of differences though. So with regards to these routes, we're already talking about them, so I'll just keep talking about it. With Tor, you make a circuit, and that circuit is basically the set of nodes that you're actually bouncing your traffic through in order to give you the kind of, to kind of break this link between your public IP and maybe the timing of when I was sending the original packets, right? Which is metadata that can be now in the age of, there's like kind of the kind of machine learning that governments and increasingly like large companies have. Even those tiny bits of information can actually be used to over time de-anonymize people. And that's kind of a problem, that it uses the same route for a particular amount of time. Okay, because you could, say if you sent a couple of cryptocurrency transactions and you send it through that route, and people are able to watch everything that comes in and everything that comes out of Tor. You could then maybe look at that traffic and say, oh, well, I think that's a cryptocurrency transaction. And then, okay, well, those three have been sent like pretty similar time, kind of through a similar circuit. So maybe that's probably the same person. And that's information that could actually be used to de-anonymize you, right? The difference between NIM and Tor, with NIM, we use each packet is routed individually. So we don't have this concept of a circuit. So when also we use a different packet format, which is called Sphinx, actually the same packet format that Lightning uses. And what will happen is, I have a message that I want to send to you through the Mixnet. You will have a local NIM client, a software client running on your machine. And what it will basically do, it'll take this message, it'll chop it up into identically sized Sphinx packets, each of which is being routed differently through the Mixnet as well. And then it will number them. And then it will send all of them through the Mixnet. And at each hop, then basically the Mixnet also introduces a variable timing delay. So basically, each node in the Mixnet will hold the packet for a little bit. And that is also semi-randomized and can be set as well, which is some of the work that we're working on, how to properly parameterize this so that, if you want to send a really, really, really private transaction and don't mind waiting, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever, you could do that. But maybe if actually I just want ambient kind of, still very good, privacy, but I don't mind that it's, I need it to be a bit quicker. I could also parameterize that too. Right? So that's one of the main differences, is that we don't have this concept of a circuit, which can lead to some leakage. Also, because of all of our packets are the same size and encrypted the same way, then you can't really say, okay, well, that traffic looks like a website being loaded, or an email, or something like this. And then the final aspect is, sorry, there's a fly. Oh, so then the final aspect is that all of the nodes are also sending each other what we call cover traffic or dummy traffic, which is basically just, again, it's just Sphinx packets, right, that are being routed and looped through the Mixnet, which is where actually the name for the original protocol design that the Mixnet's based on, Loopix, comes from. So you're kind of sending traffic, which looks the same as all the other traffic, into a stream of traffic, which is being held. So it's kind of like shuffling a deck of cards, but all the deck of cards look the same before each hop. And that's per packet routing as well, which also means, and then when it comes to reliability as well, it also means that, maybe if 1 or 2 packets get dropped, that's fine, they get retransmitted, but you don't have this problem where you can, you could maybe take down 1 or 2 nodes in Tor and then your entire circuit stops working, and that's where, and then you get a stream of traffic that just kind of disappears. So there's resistance to that as well, which is obviously in terms of, user kind of user retention and just general ease of use of this thing. It makes it a lot more friendly, I think.
But I think this separation of packets, when instead of having a circuit, you have them individually encrypted and you have them compressed into the same size, does it come with a speed trade-off? Is it slower than Tor from this point of view?
So this is a really interesting question. So, Tor, obviously the main use case for Tor is to be is for like private web browsing, right? And obviously there are certain trade-offs. Mixnets in general, the design of a Mixnet is more suited for the kind of asynchronous operations where either having a small lag or a tiny bit of packet loss that then has to be kind of retransmitted so it kind of catches up. It's a lot more suited to these asynchronous things, as opposed to maybe you want to do streaming or something like that. That said, because of this parameterization that I was talking about that we're trying to implement as well, maybe I could be like, well, I want my thing to be very slightly less private. And I mean, these are very small, it's all still has the base privacy properties of the Mixnet, right? So metadata protection, and the ability to protect against traffic analysis attacks. But maybe I want it to be a little bit faster. And, that's also something that helps there. But at the moment, I had a Telegram call the other day through the Mixnet, which had a very slight delay on it. But if you're wanting to have a call where, I don't know, maybe me and you have some way of proving to each other that it is actually us that, I don't know, maybe I sent you an email requesting Bitcoin or something and you want proof of life kind of confirmation from me. Mm-hmm. That's something that's happened. Dave Hareshin, our CTO, he watched YouTube through it the other day, it was very good quality as well. So there are some trade-offs in theory, but we're trying to counter those trade-offs with this kind of parameterization that we're also really working on with the Mixnet too,
Yeah, I understand.
After Mt. Gox collapsed, that was really the precipice of me saying, right, this has to change. We need a totally transparent exchanging system and base it on gold instead of fiat.
Vaultoro is the hard money exchange which helps you beat inflation with instant swaps between the best stores of value known to man, gold and Bitcoin. Unlike most exchanges, Vaultoro understands the importance of transparency and security. All gold holdings are secured in top-tier Swiss private vaults and fully insured against theft, fire, and more. Maximize your purchasing power today by going to Vaultoro.com/Bitcoin takeover. This is not financial advice, but gold has been humankind's most reliable store of value in the last 6,000 years. Do your own research. Use promotion code TAKEOVER for a one-time bonus of 1 gram of gold for the first 50 new customers buying gold with Bitcoin. Are you concerned that your friends, neighbors, or KYC exchange might know how much Bitcoin you own? It is time to take your financial privacy seriously with Wasabi Wallet, a free and open source wallet solution which makes use of mega coin joins to mix your coins with those of hundreds of other strangers. Thanks to the groundbreaking Wabi Sabi engine, your coins get divided in smaller, untraceable units, which grant you great anonymity for both hodling and spending. Download Wasabi Wallet 2.0 today at wasabiwallet.io and take advantage of the mega coin joins. It's free and it's open source, so don't trust, verify. What are you going to wear when Bitcoin hits $1 million? The same old $20 t-shirt? Try Maison Machi, the designer clothes made in Paris by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. They're not your average mass-produced sweatshop clothes. Machi will ask for your measurements and tailor every piece of clothing according to the shape of your body, so you always look and feel great in your t-shirt, hoodie, or dress. It's all made in France by real artisans who also happen to be Bitcoiners, which is why Maison Machi only accepts Bitcoin as payment for their clothes. Get a Maison Machi t-shirt or hoodie today. It might even help you find a girlfriend. And once you do get a girlfriend, you can also buy her a Maison Machi dress. Stop having fun looking poor and check out maisonmachi.com. That's MaisonMaachi.com.
Something interesting that I remember from the first time when I met Harry is that we were in Mallorca last year at a conference, and he met Peter Todd, and Peter Todd asked him, how did you convince the European Commission to fund the project? And Harry said something about leveraging this geopolitical situation where maybe that the European Commission was concerned that Tor is controlled too much by the United States and they need something that the United States doesn't control. So do you think that NIM can play this geopolitical arbitrage, and is it censorship resistant as opposed to what Tor is right now?
So at the moment, the date that we're speaking right now, NIM is not censorship resistant. This is one of the next kind of big thorny problems that we want to be dealing with, because, and this has already come up. We've had a few users in Iran, we've had a few users in China, we've had a few users in other places whose traffic hasn't worked in those countries, and obviously that's because of all the things I was just saying. Your NIM client comes online and starts firing off a steady stream of Sphinx packets at a fairly consistent rate. That looks really weird if you do have an ISP who's monitoring for strange packet behavior. So at the moment, no, we do have problems with censorship resistance, but we are working on those. And there are always patches that you can do, but we're trying to work on something on a more systematic, a more deep level. Yeah, that's one of the things that we want to start working on.
You can argue that the censorship resistance issue exists only because the adoption rate is low. If there were more packets that looked identical and more people used it and the ISP saw more of that, maybe it would not be suspicious anymore. But this is just like a social interpretation of what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's one possible way of interpreting it, that, yeah, it like, you know, you have a very few people who are suddenly sending these streams of packet and these stick out because of how weird they look. But I think there's also the other problem that it's, at the moment, the traffic's quite easily identifiable as being strange. So that obviously the first time you see it, then you're like, okay, well, if we watch for that in the future, then, you know, we always just block it, right? So, yeah, there needs to essentially be a way of obfuscating that first hop between the user and getting it into the Mixnet. And so, you know, the first thing, the first kind of node, the nodes that sit on the outside of the Mixnet, and this is maybe something I should have mentioned earlier when we're talking about the differences between Tor and NIM. So Tor, obviously, you have all of the packets, you have all of the nodes in the middle that do the routing, and you have your entrance and exit nodes on each side. And so with NIM, you're kind of adding an extra one because you have a gate. We call them gateways, which are the kind of entrance and exit nodes for the Mixnet, and they kind of provide two things. They provide authentication, because the Mixnet will in the future, it will be pay to play. You know, you'll need to pay a little bit. However, we're also, you know, there's ways that maybe applications can do that for users, right? But they also offer the chance to basically store messages for you if you go offline for whatever reason. Then you come back and your gateway is like, oh, hey, you have a load of packets from the Mixnet. And then in the middle, the things that do the mixing are mix nodes. So these are things that just accept routed packets from gateways and then kind of route them through. So yeah, gateways are kind of our extra buffer between clients. And then, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You mentioned that NIM works with YouTube videos, maybe not at the speed that it would work without any kind of privacy technology running on top of your connection. But I'm pretty sure that for Bitcoin nodes, it can be, I mean, you're not really going to notice a difference. You need to only synchronize a certain amount of data.
Exactly. And that's why it's so good for these kind of asynchronous operations. You know, you don't notice if maybe you either don't notice or you don't mind if your signal messages come through, you know, a couple of fractions of a second later, or exactly with a cryptocurrency transaction where you already might have a 10-minute confirmation time. That extra second or two really doesn't change anything, you know. So that, again, that's why it's good for these more async ways of async applications, really. Yeah. Yeah.
Right now, I'm thinking how we can bring NIM to Bitcoin nodes or something.
Well, we actually have someone's already built the proof of concept for a service that would essentially allow you to privately broadcast your Bitcoin transaction. Well, it would allow you to, at the network layer, privately broadcast your Bitcoin transaction to the network, so that, you know, anyone who was looking at the, you know, where stuff's coming into the mempool from, they would only see the service. They wouldn't see you who'd actually done it. And so that's kind of the thing that we're also really working on now. But the stage that the project's at in the last couple of months, we've been really focused on, okay, how do we actually start getting applications to be kind of hooked up to this? What's the infrastructure we need for those things? How do we get users using it? And yeah, someone's already built a proof of concept for Bitcoin broadcaster. We have one for Monero transactions. We have one for Ethereum transactions. And, you know, at the moment, you can also very easily hook up existing applications that are essentially able to just speak to one of our clients, with the most common one being the SOX5 proxy protocol, which the majority of cryptocurrency applications do already have. You know, we've used Blockstream Green, we've used Electrum, we've used like a load of other Bitcoin wallets through the Mixnet already, and it does work. Yeah.
That's nice. You mentioned something about proof of concept, and I know that you presented something about potential projects that you want basically to outline and you want other people to step in to develop them. Tell me about that. It's some sort of master plan or something.
Yeah, so so obviously I'm, as the developer relations kind of officer, one of the core things of my job is enabling people to build with NIM, doing some proof of concepting work myself, And there's a variety of ways that I can basically do that. Whether it's through technical docs and guides, or whether it's kind of, building proof of concepts myself and then showing it to the community and people build on that. Or the more formalized way of doing it is our grant scheme, which is something that's going to launch very, very soon. And yeah, there's a couple of things. There's a couple of ways that I'm kind of that we're approaching this. So there's a few apps that people have already started to build, and we want to be able to fund people properly to actually, to properly work on those applications. But then there's also a list of specifications that from the kind of both the feedback from people who've been running some of this infrastructure, to enable people to use apps in the last few months, or stuff that just I've noticed myself and, some of the other members of the team have noticed, we're basically going to be writing a series of specs of kind of stuff that we would like people to build and that we want to fund them to build using them. At the moment, a lot of these are very based on, adding more services to the Mixnet, enabling people to hook up local local email clients to be able to, anonymously use the Mixnet, as was the OG use case of Mixnets was anonymous email remailers, right? So, basically enabling people to build that kind of stuff. But there's also a wild card as well there. So if anyone thinks they have an existing app that they'd really like to use NIM as the transport layer, then they can also kind of apply with that wild card of integration. And
you mentioned remailers and that being the OG use case. That's why Bitcoin was, at least in the early stages, being researched. That's why we had all of these projects like BitGold, like B-Money, like what else did we have?
Well,
eCash.
Yeah,
it was trying basically to solve this problem of people running remailing services, like servers in their houses. And how do you pay for that? Well, you don't want to send a bank account transfer because it defeats the purpose of anonymity. So do you have an online currency? Not really. How can you make it, decentralized and censorship resistant and have a larger market? Well, that's pretty hard to figure out. And you had all of these sort of centralized currencies that failed, and then we ended up receiving Bitcoin.
But proof of work also was originally an anti-mail spam measure as well, right? So Hashcash. The history of email and Bitcoin is so thoroughly intertwined. And we've talked about David Chaumian a few times. We've Mixnet, all of these things. These were also really, really focused on cash and email, because cash and email ultimately are, like you said, it's the way you can privately communicate and how you can try and have a non-centralized way from communicating with people, also paying them. So the history of them is really intertwined, and obviously it's something that with them we want to support. We already support Bitcoin wallet integration in quite a manual way, so we want to actually also fund deeper integration where it's just within the app, and maybe there's a connect with NIM button or something like this for your for the transactions that you don't want to leak your IP, and and also trying to get this email services up and running as well, so people can just plug their Thunderbird into a local SOX 5 client and then be hiding themselves from their email servers.
Let's assume that there will be developers listening to this, and they might be searching for opportunities, and you have some incentives there. You have a fund to pay them to build stuff. Can you provide a couple of examples of stuff that you need to get built on NIM?
So one of the things I've already talked about, a service provider that can deal with emails. So at the moment we have a way of essentially we have something called a network requester, which is vaguely analogous to a Tor exit node, vaguely, but with one key difference in that it has a whitelist feature. And so the whitelist feature is that, say if I want to run a service where I want to be able to have Blockstream Green, Electrum, and maybe a Monero wallet, and I want to be able to essentially take traffic from the Mixnet and forward that traffic to whatever backend servers are required by those desktop applications. and essentially kind of act almost as that kind of exit node for people. That already exists, but we need one for emails as well, which so that's one of the things I'm going to spec out as well. And one of the other specifications is a way for these service providers to actually kind of announce themselves to the network as well. At the moment, as a form of Sybil resistance, we have a way that mixed nodes and gateways can announce themselves to the network, and they have to do that by staking a small amount. And those are all then held in a CosmWasm smart contract on our blockchain, which is called Nix. At the moment, we don't really have anything analogous for service providers, but obviously that's one of the core bits of infrastructure that you need for, when something's scaling. You can't always just be kind of asking around in chat groups for, an address of a network request that then you can send stuff to. So we need a way for them to be able to, in a fairly trustless way, announce themselves to a network, and then anyone can just pull that list down and say, okay, well, these are the list of services, these are maybe the list of things that they support, and that's how I kind of, that's how you start actually bringing users in a lot more, because you can start integrating that in front ends. And then for a user, it's as simple as, it's in a front end, and okay, well, I want to send maybe Telegram traffic, and there's a list of them there, and then you pick one, and really starting to kind of like flesh out how you would do this in a properly decentralized way. Yeah.
About the NIM token,
yes,
a lot of people listening to this will be like, why does it need a token? And also, do you think it can be moved to some sort of Bitcoin layer for better security?
Okay. So, the reason it needs a token is, like I said, it's incentivized, right? We want people to actually, we want people to get paid for running these bits of infrastructure. Because as we've seen with, there's obviously with like mining pools, staking pools, all of this kind of stuff over the last few years, adding market dynamics to the running of infrastructure, generally, it brings more people in who actually want to do it. And also, it's a very important thing that you're doing. You're providing a piece of privacy infrastructure, and this could be something that's maybe it's life or death for someone, but maybe you're also just you're providing privacy to the rest of the world, which is something that we desperately need. So yeah, you need to incentivize it, obviously. I do believe originally, like an earlier iteration, was actually using Bitcoin in some form, but then I think just because of the complexity of the system, then moving to a decentralized substrate that had smart contracts enabled, and especially the kind of smart contracts that CosmWasm enables us. So we're a Cosmos SDK chain. That just gave us a lot more kind of flexibility, and it gave us the kind of zero finality that also we kind of need when we're talking about, whether a mixed node is available to route traffic, whether it's not, what the rewards are, all of this, because it happens in the smart contracting layer. You really need something with the real, kind of instant finality and the flexibility that Cosmos will, the Cosmos SDK actually enables us to have. In theory, you could do something like this on Bitcoin, but then where your kind of central accounting layer is, then also becomes more of a difficult question to solve.
I think by now rootstock, RSK, and there will be stuff like RGB on top of Lightning and Taro or whatever. They can provide some pretty good ways. So who knows? Maybe
exactly,
in the future.
Who knows? You could totally see it being ported as well. Maybe if someone wants to build something analogous, then then you completely could. Yeah. The token really is. The token is, people will use it to pay for using the Mixnet eventually. And it's also the way that people who are running all of these nodes, running all of these services, will get paid for doing it. Because obviously it's incredible to see that, there's 6,000 Tor nodes that people are looking after just out of altruism, right? But then, we wanted to, we now could, so we wanted to see if we could incentivize people, but then also there's, incentivization and the market dynamics then kind of can really help providing a better service as well. Yeah. because there's a certain amount of market dynamics within the way that mixed nodes themselves are selected. And so you need a token and a reputation system to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, some people will not be happy to hear this, but at the same time, we need to think about the situation of Tor, where the incentive is to collect data, and that's why governments run most of the exit nodes. So you do use that network, you benefit from a degree of anonymity, but it's not absolute. And if we want something better, then I guess we need to compromise and accept that you're going to have to pay.
Exactly. But I mean, it might not be you, the single user, that might be paying for using the network, right? There's lots of different ways that you can think of where in the layer or like where in the whole flow of maybe I want to use a chat app where this payment's actually made. And you could also imagine that services would almost buy just kind of like bulk amounts of NIM. And so actually this payment is completely abstracted from the user. Maybe it's still completely free for the user of this app that's integrated with NIM to use, because they don't have to know. But under the hood, whoever runs the app is actually paying for its bulk users. And obviously you could then, imagining that app is also a decentralized application, then we start getting into like areas where we have a series of really decentralized and really robust kind of different systems interacting with each other. But for you as a user, it could just be the same as just opening a chat app and just chatting to people. You never even have to know necessarily, because the Mixnet is a layer 0. It's a network level anonymity solution. So yeah, that's one way.
It's a protocol, so it's agnostic to everything else. It can run on top of anything you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's an overlay, and again, similar to Tor, it's an overlay, it's a communications overlay network. So yeah, obviously, it's not a networking protocol in that we're not kind of rewriting, I don't know, TCP/IP or something, but it is a very low level. It's very low down in the stack.
Is everything about NIM open source?
Yes.
So anyone can create forks or try to break it or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. We work completely in the open. All of our code is open source. It's all there. It's all on GitHub. All of our code it's there in the NIM mono repo, and anyone can go and have a look. Some of our active research as well from the research team, some of that also happens on GitHub. So yeah, we with all of our code, we very much work in the open. Anyone can come, they can have a look at what we're working at they can look at how we're working. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say a couple of years from now, where do you see the NIM project? Do you think it's gonna penetrate users, and maybe penetrate is a bad verb. Let me think of another one. You think it's gonna get traction among users and make some people give up on Tor and use NIM? Or do you see them complementary for different use cases?
They ultimately, they're complementary technologies, Like I said before, we're really for async stuff. Tor obviously is more synchronous as well, which is just kind of the difference in the architectural designs of the two. So no, I very much see a world that they're both complementing each other, and then maybe you just kind of use NIM for some of the use cases that at the moment you would otherwise maybe use Tor or try and use I2P or something like that, So, and it will be, I think the best case scenario in a few years is because of our architecture, then there's a whole plethora of ways that people could be interacting with them, and sometimes you might never, hopefully, you would never have to know about how NIM works. You just know that, I don't know, your Signal or your Telegram or your whatever chat app is, kind of running in very private mode, or it just always runs in that and actually just always uses NIM as the network layer. You never have to think about paying. And that's kind of one end of the spectrum. And the other end of the spectrum is very much where, obviously we're at HTTP, we're in the land where, most people are kind of very technical. And so you could also imagine some apps where NIM is very exposed to you in terms of, the client connection and kind of passing credentials and paying for it and all of this. But those two things can completely coexist. And I think that's one of like the amazing robustnesses of like the way the NIM's designed. So because of that, there's different ways that we can kind of approach getting more users. And obviously on my side, I'm more on the developer-y, the more technical user-y side. But we still want to make that as easy as possible for people. And obviously, we've started to get a lot of attention from a lot of services that want to know how they can integrate. And with our developer grants program, we can start to fund that as well. So we can start funding those integrations and funding people to be building new apps or integrating existing protocols into NIM.
I see a parallel between NIM, Mixnets, and CoinJoins. What NIM aims to do and Mixnets aim to do with data, that's what CoinJoins do with money. And wallets like Wasabi do pretty much the same. They're trying to be harder to identify by people who analyze the open blockchain. Mm-hmm. What you're trying to do is to make the packets harder to identify when they're being analyzed by ISPs.
Yep.
The difference is that those from CoinJoins are monetary transactions, but you deal with data transactions. Bitcoin transactions have fees and people are used to paying a fee when they move money. Mm-hmm. Network transactions have no fee. You pay for a subscription, which is monthly or annually or whatever. Yep. You pay no fee, so you have to externalize the costs to something and you came up with the token.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there is another aspect I haven't spoken about already, which is we do have a credentialing scheme which can actually be used at the application level as well, to also kind of, you could start using it to do stuff like anonymous transactions. So it's a credentialing scheme called Coconut, and these are generated according to a threshold signature scheme by our validator set. But then these tokens they're not blockchain tokens, right? So these are, you can almost think of them as analogous to re-randomizable, so repeated use, but without linkability between uses. You can almost like JavaScript web tokens, right? But like completely non and existing offline. And that actually could also be used for stuff like private transactions and private voting, because you could essentially anonymously create a credential that you can never link between different uses of it, that says, for instance, I have X amount of tokens, so I'm going to do a vote in a DAO, or even to show that, or do private transactions as well. But going back to your original question, then something like a subscription model could work, but also where in the kind of, not stack in a technical sense, but where in the stack in terms of, the difference between the people who run an app or the actual users themselves, where that subscription happens, whether it's something like a VPN that I could be like, okay, I pay X amount of NIM a month and I route all my traffic through NIM, or the actual service is doing that for you. So there's a lot of flexibility there in terms of like what kind of a subscription model is there. But I think in the privacy space and in the crypto space, then like you said, people are more used to paying a certain amount to do a particular thing. So I think there's a lot of room there to, I don't think it will be too hard to sell people on that idea when the Mixnet does become pay to use.
Today, if you're extra paranoid, you can run VPN, like a multi-hop VPN with 2 steps, 2 different servers, and run that on top of Tor. And your connection is going to get very slow, but at least you get better privacy. Can you do that to integrate NIM? And what would it look like? Like you have the VPN on top of NIM and then on top of Tor? Or what is the best configuration for paranoia?
I mean, you could do something where, for instance, you, and this kind of goes back to our censorship resistant question previously, right? Where you could do something where you, for instance, like you obfuscate your first hop. So you create all of your NIM traffic locally, you tunnel that maybe through shadow socks or something. And then, then you tunnel that into a country which doesn't necessarily censor ISP. The ISP doesn't censor traffic as hard, and then that's when it kind of enters the Mixnet. So you could do something like that. At the moment today, if you are very, very paranoid and wanting the kind of absolute ironclad anonymity, then NIM is not there yet. We will be in a couple of months. So these are the kind of the final bits of the puzzle are being implemented and put together. So hopefully, I think from the presentation Harry did before with regards to the roadmap, hopefully before the end of the year, then we will be more in a position where you don't have to think about setting up a multi-hop VPN on top of Tor. You could just use NIM instead.
Sounds very good. I'm gonna test it in a couple of months when you have a better release. And I'm not sure what else I can ask you right now. How can you follow what's happening with the NIM project and stay up to date?
So there's the there's the normal kind of social channels. So there's our Twitter account. We have a bunch of Telegram groups. We have an announcement group as well. If you don't want to be in the kind of noisier, the noisier open public channels. We do have a Discord, and we also have Keybase as well, which we kind of started on using Keybase, and we have a public Keybase instance as well that people can come and say hey and hang out. And there's a lot more. There's a lot of kind of deeper development chats and kind of protocol chats that naturally pop up in the public Keybase instance as well. So we've got quite a few different ways that people can follow if they want to, whatever, just follow, or they want to get involved, or if anything that I've been talking about now people want to get in touch with me about, they can also get in touch with me through any of those, well, mostly Keybase and Discord and email and stuff, not the public Telegram announcements channel obviously, but yeah.
Wait, I still do have a question.
Okay.
Are there any system requirements for running a NIM node?
So it depends on what node it is at the moment. Like the system requirements, if you want to run a mixed node or a gateway, then those things really at the moment have to live on a VPS. They have to live on a remote box. In terms of kind of operating system requirements, then no, not really. They're also fairly low on storage kind of needs as well. So they're quite relaxed kind of nodes to run. With a mixed node, you do obviously want something that can do really high throughput of packet mixing. If you want to run a service or a network requester, at the moment, those are also really quite slimline because they're not really holding any traffic. They're kind of just processing it in terms of unencrypting and then passing it and then passing packets back. So at the moment, the system is actually has relatively low system requirements. One of the things that we are working on is, we've been looking at the kind of multi-core setups that people, maybe people have on the servers that they run and stuff like this. And, these parameterizations and these optimizations of the Mixnets, we are also kind of looking at working on that too. And also just getting some harder kind of system requirements out. But no, everything runs very well on Linux distributions, variety of Linux distributions. The wallet obviously works on Mac, Windows, and Linux, and yeah.
So would it work on a Raspberry Pi?
So it depends on what you want to run. So at the moment, for mixing infrastructure, it needs to be able to communicate in both IPv4 and IPv6. So that's one possible drawback, but that's more related to people's home setups and whether they have IPv6 at home. I know a lot of places don't, but yeah.
That's quite impressive. I'm going to keep an eye on the project. You should mention, so you said you have a Discord, you have a website and stuff. Just mention them, what they're named.
Okay, so it's just NIM on Discord. We are NIM Project on Twitter. We are nimtech.friends on Keybase. And just look for the NIM announcements channel in Telegram.
And if someone wants to follow you personally, is there any way to do that?
So they could either email the grant@nimtech.net email address or max@nimtech.net, or you can follow me on Twitter. And my Twitter is kind of an old Twitter handle, so it's at underscore WJTH. So it's not particularly good to say on podcast. Maybe I should change it for the next podcast.
No, don't. You just mentioned it. So
yeah. So it's quite cryptic.
People will look for underscore WJTH.
Yes. Exactly. That's me on Twitter.
Okay. It doesn't sound like anything from your name, but I'm not going to ask you what it stands for.
Cool.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to other developments in NIM.
Thanks for having me, man.
After Mt. Gox collapsed, that was really the precipice of me saying, right, this has to change. We need a totally transparent exchanging system and base it on gold instead of fiat.
Vaultoro is the hard money exchange which helps you beat inflation with instant swaps between the best stores of value known to man, gold and Bitcoin. Unlike most exchanges, Vaultoro understands the importance of transparency and security. All gold holdings are secured in top-tier Swiss private vaults and fully insured against theft, fire, and more. Maximize your purchasing power today by going to vaultoro.com/Bitcoin takeover. This is not financial advice, but gold has been humankind's most reliable store of value in the last 6,000 years. Do your own research. Use promotion code TAKEOVER for a one-time bonus of 1 gram of gold for the first 50 new customers buying gold with Bitcoin. Are you concerned that your friends, neighbors, or KYC exchange might know how much Bitcoin you own? It is time to take your financial privacy seriously with Wasabi Wallet, a free and open source wallet solution which makes use of mega coin joins to mix your coins with those of hundreds of other strangers. Thanks to the groundbreaking Wabi Sabi engine, your coins get divided in smaller, untraceable units, which grant you great anonymity for both hodling and spending. Download Wasabi Wallet 2.0 today at wasabiwallet.io and take advantage of the mega coin joins. It's free and it's open source, so don't trust, verify. What are you going to wear when Bitcoin hits $1 million? The same old $20 t-shirt? Try Maison Machi, the designer clothes made in Paris by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. They're not your average mass-produced sweatshop clothes. Machi will ask for your measurements and tailor every piece of clothing according to the shape of your body, so you always look and feel great in your t-shirt, hoodie, or dress. It's all made in France by real artisans who also happen to be Bitcoiners, which is why Maison Machi only accepts Bitcoin as payment for their clothes. Get a Maison Machi t-shirt or hoodie today. It might even help you find a girlfriend. And once you do get a girlfriend, you can also buy her a Maison Machi dress. Stop having fun looking poor and check out maisonmachi.com. That's MAISON MAACHI.com.